Good evening and welcome to the Thursday edition of Market Mantra, the program in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. My name is Rajesh Lake and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Manoj Pathak.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र की ताजा अंक में आपका स्वागत है। आधे घंटे के इस कार्यक्रम में हमेशा की तरह हम देश और दुनिया की चुनी हुई कारोबारी, आर्थिक और शेयर बाजार से संबंधित ताजा खबरों को लेकर हाजिर हैं। आइए कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत करते हैं अंग्रेजी में हेडलाइंस से, जिसे लेकर मौजूद हैं राजेश लेख।
Retail inflation surges to 7.79% in April. The index of industrial production, IIP, grows at 1.9% in March. At the stock markets, falling for the fifth straight day, Sensex slumps 1,158 points, Nifty plunges 359 points. Rupee weakens 18 paise against the dollar. And Larsen & Toubro's consolidated net profit rises nearly 10% in the fourth quarter of the last fiscal.
देश में अप्रैल में खुदरा मुद्रास्फीति बढ़कर 7.79% पर पहुंची। मार्च में औद्योगिक उत्पादन 1.9% बढ़ा। घरेलू शेयर बाजार में लगातार 5वें सत्र में हुई गिरावट। सेंसेक्स 1,158 अंक लौटका। निफ्टी 359 अंक नीचे आया। $1 की तुलना में रुपया हुआ 18 पैसे कमजोर। और लार्सन एंड टुब्रो का शुद्ध लाभ पिछले वित्त वर्ष की चौथी तिमाही में 10% बढ़ा। देश में अप्रैल महीने में उपभोक्ता मूल्य सूचकांक पर आधारित खुदरा मुद्रास्फीति की दर बढ़कर 7.79% पर पहुंच गई। सांख्यिकी और कार्यक्रम क्रियान्वयन मंत्रालय की ओर से आज जारी आंकड़ों के अनुसार खाद्य तेल और ईंधन पदार्थों के मूल्यों की बढ़ोतरी से यह वृद्धि हुई है। गौरतलब है कि भारतीय रिजर्व बैंक की मुद्रास्फीति नीति के तहत ऊपरी सीमा 6% से ऊपर महंगाई लगातार 4 महीने से बनी हुई है।
The country's index of industrial production, IIP, rose 1.9% in March. The mining sector grew at 4%. Manufacturing sector posted a growth of 0.9% and electricity generation grew at 6.1% in the month of March. Capital goods sector grew at 0.7%. Infrastructure and construction goods registered a growth of 7.3% and consumer durables sector showed a negative growth of 3.2% and consumer non-durable sector posted a negative growth of 5%.
देश की अर्थव्यवस्था से जुड़े महत्वपूर्ण आंकड़ों पर प्रतिक्रिया के लिए हम ऑनलाइन आमंत्रित करना चाहेंगे बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड के एडिटोरियल डायरेक्टर और जाने माने देश के पत्रकार A.K. भट्टाचार्य को। AKB कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत है।
वार्म वेलकम AKB।
नमस्कार।
AKB, जो आंकड़े आए हैं खास तौर से मुद्रास्फीति से संबंधित, वह यानी कितनी चिंता का विषय हमारे लिए है, समझना चाहेंगे हम।
देखिए, जो आंकड़े आए हैं उसमें आश्चर्य होने की कोई बात नहीं है। इन आंकड़ों को आने को देखते हुए ही जो भारतीय रिजर्व बैंक ने 4 मई को 40 बेसिस पॉइंट्स का रेपो रेट में वृद्धि कर दिया था।
Unfortunately, we cannot hear our expert at this point of time. We will try and get
हमारे साथ AKB लाइन पर बने हुए हैं। हम आपका ध्यान आकृष्ट करना चाहेंगे और जो IIP के आंकड़े हैं उन पर समझना चाहेंगे कि ये आंकड़े क्या दर्शा रहे।
मुझे लग रहा है कि ये जो मुद्रास्फीति की दरें,
what has led to the increase, the jump of 7.79%? The retail inflation based on consumer price index CPI, as we have already communicated, has jumped to 7.79% in April. Inflation numbers have now been above the upper limit of RBI's 2% to 6% tolerance band for 4 straight months. The Reserve Bank of India mainly factors in retail inflation while arriving at its bi-monthly policy.
Hello, is there a question for me? हेलो, ये सवाल क्या मेरे लिए है क्या?
Let's continue, Manoj. Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee has been tasked by the government to tame retail inflation based on the Consumer Price Index at 4%. So, AKB, how is this going to be taken up by the government going forward?
Well, I think what has happened is not very unexpected, because anticipating a sharp rise in the retail prices, retail inflation rate, and as you said that this is the fourth consecutive month where the inflation rate is above 6%, the upper tolerance band. The Reserve Bank of India had come in and tried to soften the blow by raising the repo rate by 40 basis points on 4th of May. But what is to be noted here is that almost half of the consumer price index is composed of food and fuel items. And currently what we are seeing is the food and fuel prices are on the rise. And as a result of which, the retail prices are ruling at a level of more than 7%. I think this will require Reserve Bank of India to take further steps in its June monetary policy review, and interest rates may have to be raised once again. So that is one possible option that the Reserve Bank of India will look at. And the second option would be the government may be reviewing some of the supply side responses, including some reduction in the taxes or the excise rates on petroleum products. So these are the two possible scenarios that one can look at.
AKB, यहाँ पर हम समझना चाहेंगे कि भारतीय रिजर्व बैंक के पास जो उपाय हुआ करते हैं उनके तहत वह क्या कदम उठा सकता अगली मौद्रिक नीति में, जिसकी आपने अभी चर्चा की?
मेरे हिसाब से जो अगली मौद्रिक नीति की समीक्षा होगी वो जून महीने में होगी जी। और हमें मई में अप्रैल का आंकड़े देखने को लगा कि ये चौथी महीने लगातार जो इन्फ्लेशन रेट है वो 6% से ऊपर है जी। जून में आपको कोई आंकड़ा नहीं मिलेगा। तो जो समीक्षा जो होगी वो अप्रैल की जो आंकड़े आज जो मिली हैं उसी के बेसिस में होगी। तो मुझे लगता है कि रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया फिर से जो जून की समीक्षा में एक बार रेपो रेट को शायद और थोड़ा वृद्धि कर दे और कैश रिजर्व रेशियो को बढ़ा दे, जिससे कि जो लिक्विडिटी जो है इकोनॉमी में उसको और भी समेट ले, क्योंकि ये जो इन्फ्लेशन जो हो रहा है वो लिक्विडिटी के लिए हो रहा है और इम्पोर्टेड इन्फ्लेशन के लिए हो रहा है। इसीलिए मैंने कहा था कि रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया के सामने इंटरेस्ट रेट को बढ़ाने का एक स्टेप है, और केंद्रीय सरकार के लिए ये देखना होगा कि किस तरह से वो एक सप्लाई रिस्पांस तैयार करे, जिससे कि जो खाद्य और जो ईंधन सामग्री जो है उनकी अवेलेबिलिटी और भी किस तरह से नॉर्मलाइज हो जाए, और शायद जो ड्यूटीज जो टैक्सेस हैं वो किस तरह से इनको घटा सके, जिससे कि दाम कंट्रोल में आए।
बहुत बहुत आपका धन्यवाद AKB।
नमस्कार।
हम आगे बढ़ते हैं और चलते हैं शेयर बाजार की ओर। घरेलू शेयर बाजार में लगातार 5वें सत्र में आज निवेशकों की ओर से बिकवाली की गई और ये बिकवाली चौतरफा रही, जिसके कारण प्रमुख सूचकांक 2% से अधिक घाटे में रहे। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स कारोबार के अंत में 2.1% यानी 1158 अंक घटकर 52,930 पर बंद हुआ। उधर नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी 359 अंक यानी 2.2% कम होकर 15,808 दर्ज हुआ। छोटी और मझोली कंपनियों के शेयरों की बिकवाली भी तेज रही। पीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स 2.2% और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स 2% नुकसान के साथ बंद हुए।
At the stock markets falling for the fifth straight day, the Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange tanked 1,158 points or 2.1% to trade at 52,930 today. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange slumped 359 points or 2.2% to 15,808. In the broader market on the BSE, the mid-cap index dropped 2.2% and the small-cap index slipped 2%. The market breadth on the BSE was weak, with over 3 stocks falling for every single gainer. All the sectoral indices on the BSE ended lower, with the power index being the biggest loser, slumping 4.1%. The utilities index plunged 3.9%, the metal index shed 3.8%, the Bankex and the finance index slipped 3.1% each. The telecom index dropped 2.8%, the industrial index lost 2.7%, the consumer durables and the basic material index fell 2.6% each, the capital goods index lost 2.5%. The realty index dropped 2.3%, the consumer discretionary index and the auto index slipped 2% each. The energy index fell 1.4%, the healthcare index slid 1.3%, the FMCG and the oil and gas index shed 1.1% each. The tech index ended 1% lower and the IT index fell 0.9%.
नजर डालते हैं रुपए की स्थिति पर। अंतर बैंकिंग विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में $1 की तुलना में रुपया आज 18 पैसे कमजोर हुआ, 77 रुपए 42 पैसे पर बंद हुआ। इन खबरों पर चर्चा के लिए हम स्टूडियो में ऑनलाइन आमंत्रित करना चाहेंगे शेयर बाजार के जाने माने विशेषज्ञ राजीव नागपाल को। राजीव जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है।
धन्यवाद।
राजीव जी, बाजार में आज फिर बड़ी गिरावट हमने देखी। लगातार 5 सत्र से निवेशक अपना पैसा निकाल रहे हैं। आज की गिरावट के पीछे मुख्य कारण क्या नजर आ रहे हैं आपको?
देखिए, एक तो ग्लोबल क्यूज हैं और उसके अगर आप देखेंगे तो यूएस मार्केट भी काफी वीक है, बाकी इमर्जिंग मार्केट भी काफी वीक है। अगर मैं आपको नंबर दूं तो 52 वीक हाई से हम 15% नीचे हैं और डाउ जोन्स जो है वो 14% नीचे है अपने 52 वीक हाई से। तो प्रिटी मच अगर आप देखेंगे तो ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम हम ग्लोबल इंडेक्स को ही ट्रैक कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज ग्लोबली इक्विटी एज एन एसेट क्लास नॉर्मली हिट करती है जब इंटरेस्ट रेट ऊपर जाते हैं, और ऊपर एक तो स्पीड से गया और इस बार तो थोड़ा सा ज्यादा स्पीड, और जो इंडिकेशन है वो भी ये है कि इंटरेस्ट रेट्स में वो फर्म रहेंगे आने वाले समय में बिकॉज ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन इन यूएस। तो उसके चलते सारा कुछ वैल्यूएशन हाई है आपका जो एक ऑल्टरनेटिव एसेट क्लास है वहां रिटर्न बेटर है आपको, और पिछले 2 साल की आउट परफॉर्मेंस भी है। हम देख रहे हैं कि बाजार आज गिरा है, पर अगर आप पिछले 2 साल से कंपेयर करेंगे तो ओवर लास्ट 2 years इक्विटी एंड बोथ इक्विटी इंडेक्स हैव डन एक्सट्रीमली वेल। सो ये करेक्शन है नॉर्मल पार्ट ऑफ मार्केट विच अब थोड़े दिनों से जो हम देख रहे हैं।
Okay, Rajiv, according to you, when we were discussing at 3 p.m., the biggest factor is the shrinking liquidity globally as the central bank is battling inflation, and the figures are there for us to see. So do you think that is also one of the biggest factor?
Yes,
because
I mean, that is absolutely. I mean, see, what has happened was that when the pandemic broke out in 2020 and there was a sudden shutdowns everywhere globally, there have been cases in different places at different point of time. What happened was that, in order to ensure that the economy does not go down very dramatically, every central banker decided to loosen the interest rate and pump in more money. And if you look at US Fed, probably in the last 20 years, they have figured out that the easy way to do it is to print money, print your way out from a trouble. So all that money which was coming in, but in last 6 months, 8 months, from last year, August onwards, they clearly started indicating that they are going to slow down the printing money because they were experiencing that economy is coming back to track. And their call was that the inflation is coming because of the disruption in the supply chain. Now that disruption in supply chain has been more than a permanent, more than a aberration. It has been happening at different points of time at different parts of the world. Once again we saw a lockdown in China. So again the same problem which everyone faced in various industries because they had one or the other parts of their whole supply chain being placed in China. So all these factors led to a situation where money supply was high and inflation was running even higher. So they kind of they put in a break all of a sudden. Now that is where liquidity from being extremely high, chasing any riskier asset class which equity is in short term, we are seeing that valuations being high, so that liquidity lowering of liquidity has a higher impact. But let me tell you, if you look at the performance of Indian equities, it's relatively far better than many of the other emerging markets.
Okay. So, you mentioned inflation, you mentioned expectations of a rate hike, you also mentioned about the global markets fall. The fourth very important factor, and that is about the FIIs who continue to sell in the market. How much contribution they have done towards bringing the Sensex to such a level?
No, I'll honestly speaking, except in last 15 days, where their selling has shown slightly higher impact. But I think they have been, numbers clearly show that they have been net sellers in Indian market for last 6 months, more than a 6 month period. They started selling probably in October, November, December. They were all sellers. But thanks to the fact that there is a robust DI flow, money coming from the retail equity investor, SIP, that was probably has acted as a major support, and there was not much dent. If you look at the previous episode of FI selling, when they used to sell in such numbers, the index would have corrected far, far more than what it has corrected now. The only thing in last 10-15 days of what I am witnessing is that there is slightly lesser amount of buying as far as I think the DIs and others are concerned. So that is where the damage on the stock price, especially in the mid-cap space, is slightly higher. And people are feeling the pinch that, my portfolio has seen a sharp wipeout of profits, my money has gone off, whatever I had gained, I had made in 2 years. So these kind of feeling is bound to come. But if you look at the overall FI figures, I think we have been able to absorb the selling in a actual manner. Yes, if there is a sudden feeling where, people start feeling, I'm not going to put in fresh SIP money on, which it's not going to happen. This is a theoretical possibility. Then probably the price damage would be higher.
राजीव, यहाँ पर हम आपका ध्यान आज के ही कारोबार पर ले चलना चाहेंगे। आज हम पावर सेक्टर में बड़ी गिरावट देख रहे हैं, 4% से अधिक की गिरावट हुई है। पावर इंडेक्स नीचे चला गया है। कोई खास कारण या जो चलन है उसका परिणाम है ये?
मैं ये चलन का परिणाम करूंगा। और दूसरा एक और बात है मनोज जी, पिछले थोड़े दिनों में पावर के स्टॉक बिकॉज ऑफ दी एक नेगेटिव बिल्ड हो जाता है। अभी पीछे नेगेटिव बिल्ड हो गया, बहुत गर्मी है, पावर की शॉर्टेज है, पावर कंपनी बहुत अच्छा करेंगी, तो पैसा था वो पावर स्टॉक में चला गया। नाउ बिकॉज ग्लोबल करेक्शन आई है, तो जो पैसा उसमें गया है, बिकॉज एसेंशियली पावर अगर आप ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ लास्ट 20 ईयर्स देखेंगे, एक्सेप्ट अ वेरी शॉर्ट पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, पावर स्टॉक्स हैव नॉट डन एक्सट्रीमली वेल इन इंडिया। पिछले दिनों में ही कुछ कंपनीज ने प्लेसमेंट वगैरह करी है, कुछ फंड रेजिंग करी है, क्योंकि वो सोलर में जा रहे हैं या उसमें जा रहे हैं, उसकी वजह से पावर स्टॉक्स डन वेल। सो दिस इज पार्ट ऑफ द कोर्स। और ज्यादा इसलिए गिरा है क्योंकि आपको थोड़ा सा पिछले दिनों में जो पैसा था वो इसमें गया जी।
Okay, what Rajiv, I want to ask you is that today we've got the inflation figures, IIP figures also, and the contraction in durables and non-durables is a worrying scenario as it directly chips away at the consumer spending, which is a key driver of India's economic growth. If that be the case, then what will happen henceforth? Inflation is high, there is no durable and non-durable growth, and the consumers are not spending. Then should we worry about growth?
See, I'll tell you, in my opinion, probably, the fact is inflation largely is led by, one of the biggest factors in inflation is the rising oil prices. Now, and this is out of beyond anybody's hands in India. Till when they will remain high, it depends. The problem have got compounded because of this Russian and Ukrainian situation. Now, the only thing is that till the time the oil prices come down significantly, it would be foolhardy to assume that inflation is going to come down. Now, but the base effect, of course, is going to play out. As far as the consumer numbers you told me about, to be very honest, I don't think the numbers are captured very well in India.
Okay.
Most of the numbers in India are not captured in a way they are in some of the other countries, because our data collection system has improved in last few years, but it has not reached a level where you actually take into account, because some of the people are not ready to give information. I don't think so that the growth is going to, there is a natural growth which Indian economy is bound to have. And we should remember one thing, one of the biggest contributor to growth of consumption in India is the IT sector. With close to $200 billion of export, and on an average 45% of the income of IT companies being given in form of salaries, you can imagine the amount of consumable income people who work in IT sector get. And there has been a sharp increase. So there's one major area which lead to demand of whether it's auto, whether it's real estate, that still remains intact. Yes, I think probably after monsoon and all, you will see numbers, and on a macro level, fair enough, yes, there would be a few basis points here and there, you will say numbers are not coming up, but there are pockets which their growth is going to remain. I mean, if you look at the corporate numbers coming now, with oil at such high price and oil derivatives playing an important part in the raw material of those companies, I can see that still companies are able to maintain the market share, still able to increase the prices. Yes, there is a hit on profit margin thanks to sharp increase in commodity prices because of the disruptions. But we should remember one thing, that when the prices go beyond a point, the demand of this commodity also get affected. So the price is naturally correct. So maybe for next couple of months you will see high inflation numbers. But I don't think from a long-term perspective that's going to become an issue.
आइए खबरों का सिलसिला आगे बढ़ाते हैं। अब कुछ खबरें कॉर्पोरेट जगत से। टाटा मोटर्स ने पिछले वित्त वर्ष की चौथी तिमाही में 1033 करोड़ रुपए का समेकित घाटा होने की खबर दी है। गौरतलब है कि इसके पिछले वर्ष की इसी अवधि में कंपनी को 7,605 करोड़ रुपए का घाटा हुआ था। वार्षिक आधार पर चौथी तिमाही में कंपनी का राजस्व 11.5% घटकर 78,439 करोड़ रुपए पर आ गया।
Larsen & Toubro's consolidated net profit rose nearly 10% year-on-year, 3,621 crore rupees for the fourth quarter. Consolidated revenues for the quarter rose 10% year-on-year to 52,851 crore rupees. The board of L&T has recommended a final dividend of 22 rupees per equity shares. The company said it bagged orders worth 73,941 crore rupees during the same quarter, up 46% year-on-year. Rajiv, the result of Tata Motors, is that reflective of the state of auto sector?
No. I
Why do you say that?
Hello. No, I don't think so. Tata Motors is reflective of the state of the auto sector. See, what has happened is, in specific case of Tata Motors, their PV business, which is the car business in India, has started doing very well. I mean, if you look at last 1.5 years, the number of the car sales of different segments has been not only improving YOY basis, on month-on-month basis also, they have given far better performance. And their EV business, or the heavy commercial vehicle business and other parts have also been doing. So, while it used to be a bellwether of what's happening in auto, but no longer it is, because the large part of the sales on a consolidated basis comes from the Land Rover and the other Jaguar operations. That is where the meat comes from in terms of Tata Motor sales. So to me, what is happening in auto space is very different. Two-wheelers is entirely a different story. Four-wheelers is entirely different story. Commercial vehicle, which is LCVs and HCVs, which are below a certain tonnage limit, that is an entirely different story. So each company, whether it's Ashok Leyland, whether it is like Eicher, partly Tata Motors, they are kingmakers of their own area. Okay. So I don't think Tata Motors that way is the bellwether of what's happening in the auto space.
Okay. आइए खबरों का सिलसिला आगे बढ़ाते हैं, चलते हैं वैश्विक बाजारों की ओर। सबसे पहले एशियाई शेयर बाजार, जहां पर कुल मिलाकर बिकवाली देखी गई और प्रमुख सूचकांक 2 वर्षों के न्यूनतम स्तर पर आ गए। हांगकांग का हिंगसेंग 2.2% घाटे में रहा। जापान के निक्केई 225 में 1.8% की गिरावट हुई। चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स 0.1% नीचे आया। सिंगापुर का स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स 1.9% घाटे में रहा। उधर दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 1.6% नुकसान के साथ बंद हुआ। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में ही बड़ी गिरावट समाचार तैयार किए जाने तक चल रही थी। अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार में लंदन का FTSE 100 2.5% नीचे चल रहा था। फ्रांस के कैक 40 में 2.6% की गिरावट थी। जर्मनी का डेक्स 2.4% घाटे के साथ कारोबार कर रहा था। अन्य आर्थिक खबरों पर ध्यान दें तो ब्रिटेन में मार्च में आर्थिक गतिविधियों में 0.1% की अप्रत्याशित गिरावट हुई। सप्लाई चेन बाधा के चलते वाहनों की बिक्री घटी है। राष्ट्रीय सांख्यिकी कार्यालय की ओर से दी गई जानकारी के अनुसार वर्ष 2022 के पहले 3 महीनों में सकल घरेलू उत्पाद वृद्धि दर 0.8% रही, जो कि बैंक ऑफ इंग्लैंड के पूर्वानुमान 0.9% से कम है।
On Wall Street, key indices ended sharply lower yesterday, with the Nasdaq dropping more than 3% and the Dow falling for the 5th straight day after the US inflation data did little to ease investors' worries over the outlook for interest rates and the economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 327 points or 1% to 31,834. The S&P 500 lost 66 points or 1.7% to 3,935 and the Nasdaq Composite declined 373 points to 11,364. Very briefly, Rajiv, concerns are mounting that the US Fed may not be able to bring down inflation without sparking a recession there.
Going to be recession. I think probably a soft landing, but I don't think that probably this year. See, when what happens is this narrative gets further amplified with when the stock move, when the index move in the direction of the narrative. So these, a fall in Dow Jones for a 10-day period will bring in a certain amount of narrative. Once down the line, when the index are back moving up, another narrative will come out. These are normal corrections which will come. So I don't think so that recession is anywhere in sight. I mean, I think it's too far-fetching the narrative at this point of time.
Global crude oil prices dropped more than 2% today in a volatile week as the recession fears dogged global financial markets, outweighing supply concerns and geopolitical tensions in Europe. So the Brent crude futures slumped $2.26 to $105.25 a barrel. US crude futures fell $2.45 to $103.26 a barrel. Rajiv, as long as the conflict in Ukraine is going on, you think the prices are not likely to come down?
Yes, because the speculative money also is not going to come out of oil. I mean, the huge amount of speculative money goes into any asset class which is doing well. So as it comes out of equity, as we are seeing happening right now, there will be a time when it will come out of oil. It has, in last 20 years, there have been enough instances where we have seen a pull out of speculative money from oil, and which is led to a sharp decline. I mean, people forget. In last 1 year, there was an instance when oil prices went down below zero. Okay. I mean, we're just forgetting that particular part of the story.
बस यहीं पर श्रोताओं की ओर से राजीव हम आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहेंगे।
धन्यवाद मनोज।
अंत में चलते हैं सर्राफा बाजार की ओर। घरेलू सर्राफा बाजार में आज सोने और चांदी के रुख में अलग अलग रुख देखा गया। मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में जून अनुबंध वाले सोने का मूल्य 75 रुपए बढ़ा 50,889 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर पहुंचा, लेकिन चांदी जुलाई अनुबंध वाली 202 रुपए घटी 60,550 रुपए प्रति किलो पर आ गई।
And before we close, the headlines once again. Retail inflation surges to 7.79% in April, and Index of Industrial Production, IIP, grows at 1.9% in March. At the stock markets, falling for the 5th straight day, Sensex slumps 1,158 points, Nifty plunges 359 points, Rupee weakens 18 paise against the dollar. And Larsen & Toubro's consolidated net profit rises nearly 10% in the fourth quarter of the last fiscal. That's all we have in this edition of Market Mantra. Till tomorrow, goodbye.